Psychopaths, a ruthless breed who can lie, manipulate and even murder with no hint of conscience or remorse.
And what's the murder of a few people?
They thought of you as Jesus Christ.
I am.
But the truth is, there may be one in your office. There's probably one on your street. They're all around us, often in positions of power.
I've no conscience, I can do whatever I like. If it hurts other people, I don't care.
And they're notoriously hard to identify. Tonight, with the help of leading experts, we'll attempt to unravel the mystery of this fascinating minority in our midst. We'll meet real psychopathic killers.
Y'all from England too? Yeah. It's a good country, I like that one.
We'll reveal a star of the England football team who is prepared to come out as high on the psychopathic spectrum. And we'll teach you how to spot a psychopath, the same way the FBI trains its agents, by using the movies.
This is a psychopath. This hits the mark.
We'll be counting down the top 10 screen psychos, as selected by leading psychiatrists and an FBI profiler. We'll show you everything you ever wanted to know about psychopaths, and perhaps a few things you didn't. So, no hiding behind the sofa, let the movie countdown begin. In at number 10 in our Psycho movie countdown, it's the mother of them all. More than 50 years ago, Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho slashed its way into movie history with this shocking scene. It's an editing masterclass in which twisted motel operator Norman Bates butchers his guests. Taking a shower would never be the same again.
I got the whole story, but not from Norman. I got it from his mother.
It's sad when a mother has to speak the words that condemn her own son, but I couldn't allow them to believe that I would commit murder.
Norman Bates hears his dead mother's voice in his head, but here's the irony. For a film that spurred a whole genre of psycho movies, Hitchcock got it wrong. Norman Bates is no psychopath. Psychiatrists would be more likely to diagnose him with multiple personality disorder. So what is a psychopath? What makes them tick? And why are we so fascinated by them? At number 9 in our countdown, a masterclass in how to handle a psychopath.
Could be a real help in unsolved cases. Most of them have been happy to talk to.
Jodie Foster brilliantly portrays FBI trainee Clarice Starling, who's excited and nervous about being given her first assignment.
And who's the subject?
The psychiatrist Hannibal Lecter.
Hannibal the cannibal.
Silence of the Lambs has been chosen by a real-life Clarice Starling, FBI profiler Dr. Mary Ellen O'Toole. Dr. O'Toole, a lecturer at the FBI Training Academy, shows agents how to spot a psychopath using Hollywood movies. Dr. O'Toole thinks that the battle of wits between Starling and Lecter is psychologically spot on. We asked her to talk us through their first encounter.
You have to go in understanding what their traits and characteristics are.
Good morning.
Dr. Lecter, my name is Clarice Starling. May I speak with you?
You're one of Jack Crawford's, aren't you?
I am, yes.
May I see your credentials?
Certainly.
Part of the definition of a psychopath is that they are an interspecies predator. When you take them into the interview room with you, you now happen to become their prey. So they are constantly watching you, watching to see if you're nervous, kind of uncomfortable, and they're reading you better than you are reading them. His powers of observation are very quick. She flashes the FBI badge, and he notices immediately.
That expires in 1 week. You're not real FBI, are you?
I'm still in training at the academy.
Jack Crawford sent a trainee to me.
Yes, I'm a student. I'm here to learn from you. Maybe you can decide for yourself whether or not I'm qualified enough to do that.
He's very condescending. They're so narcissistic, so grandiose. They want to take charge of the interview. They want to feel like they're in control of the interview.
Sit, please.
You're something to be toyed with, which is what he does to Clarice, and she handles it beautifully.
Perhaps you'd care to lend us your view on this questionnaire, sir.
Oh, no. You were doing fine. You had been courteous and receptive to courtesy. You had established trust with the embarrassing truth about
After a promising start, Clarice makes a schoolgirl error.
your questionnaire. It won't do.
I'm only asking you to...
The film gets this twist in their encounter exactly right.
What I suggest to people is to not get into an argument with a psychopath.
You see a lot, Doctor. When are you strong enough to point that high-powered perception at yourself? What about it? Why don't you look at yourself and write down what you see? Maybe you're afraid to.
You don't point your finger at them because they're individuals who see themselves as smarter than you, better than you. How dare you compare yourself to them? It's all about him.
When Lecter feels challenged, he reasserts control.
A census taker once tried to test me. I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti.
So it's a B- for Agent Starling on her FBI report. According to Dr. O'Toole, there's a secret to spotting a psychopath, and it was developed thanks to the pioneering work of psychologist Dr. Robert Hare.
What is a psychopath? I've described psychopaths as social predators, a sensation-seeking, uncaring, callous individual who is prone to violate the rules of society.
There was a psychopathic bastard.
Striking ability to deceive, to manipulate, to con other people, emotions that are seem very superficial and very shallow. There's a stunning lack of empathy and a lack of guilt or remorse for what they've done.
Dr. Hare has spent 40 years studying psychopaths. He's come up with a system for identifying and measuring them based on a cluster of key personality traits. Here are just a few of the traits he's identified. Dr. Hare's checklist is used by law enforcement agencies around the world.
I've worked hundreds of serial murder cases. I kept reading more and more about psychopathy in terms of the traits, in terms of what those traits mean, in terms of the work of Dr. Hare. And for me, that was just a remarkable finding to see that, lo and behold, in my opinion, psychopaths committed their violent crimes differently than non-psychopaths. And to me, it was a wonderful finding. If you look for it and you know what to look for, you can tell.
Now let's see how the psychopath checklist works in the hands of an expert. Dr. Michael Stone is a world-leading specialist on psychopathy. We've been given access to travel with him for a face-to-face meeting with a convicted serial killer.
Well, today we're going to see Charles Frederick Albright, commonly known as the Eyeball Killer.
Dallas, Texas. In the early 1990s, 3 prostitutes were found murdered here. But these were no run-of-the-mill killings. Even hardened police officers were shocked when pathologists discovered a pattern of bizarre mutilations on the bodies.
As part of the autopsy, the medical examiner had to open one eye and then the other, and it was a young woman who did it, and when she did, she gasped, and she said, "The eyes are gone."
The man police arrested was Charles Albright, a church-going family man who turned out to be hiding a long criminal record for theft, fraud and sexual assault.
When we searched the house, we found frog legs, snakes, lizards, some of which had parts of them, including eyes, removed. Everyone involved, and myself included, felt like, well, there definitely has to be some human eyeballs. And so we searched extensively, but to no avail, didn't find anything.
So far as I know, no one has ever not only killed several prostitutes, but in addition, enucleated their eyeballs, which means taken out the eyeballs surgically with instruments.
For 20 years, Albright has turned down all requests for interviews. Until now.
Taking out the eyeballs, it seems to have some important psychological motive. What it is in his case, I'm hoping I might be able to learn something about today.
But with just 1 hour in a visitor's room, Dr. Stone is going to have his work cut out. Charles Albright is held in a maximum security prison in Amarillo, Texas. He's considered too dangerous to ever be released.
So what can I help you with?
Well, have you tried to picture the kind of person that would have an interest in eyeball snatching, or whatever you want to call it?
I don't know. It'd have to be fairly sick, I would think.
Well,
but since I had airtight alibis for all these crimes and couldn't possibly have done them, you know, I'm not concerned with that.
Among the people that I get to see in these situations, you're one of the brighter ones.
I was considered to be smart, but I could have cared less. Reading, writing, whatever youngsters do, because I was double promoted 3 times. I took French in college, and I took Spanish in high school and college. I have a propensity to learn.
What you would put first among your hobbies and talents?
I was an excellent photographer.
Oh.
I'm a Van Gogh fan and Rembrandt fan.
He tried to do a lot of things in his life. He collected wine. He learned to ballroom dance. He was a portrait painter. He memorized Keats. He went to Mexico for a while to become a bullfighter. He was this kind of guy that you would sit with at a dinner party and listen, mesmerized, awestruck.
When you were growing up, you had all these different skills. You could paint, you could play the piano, you knew French and Spanish and so on. Did you have any dream that, well, when I grow up, I want to be a fill in the blank, you know, some particular kind of career or person?
Well, I thought for a while I wanted to be a surgeon or a doctor, something. That's the reason I took pre-med.
Yeah.
And I was good at anatomy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when you go way back with Charlie's life, this is where some of the questions begin about him, which was his relationship with his adoptive mother, who adopted him when he was 15 months old. And she was always trying to get him to do things with her, including taxidermy.
We lived not far from a creek, and we would walk down there and get toad eggs and frog eggs and catch a snake or two, and butterflies. And I collected all this stuff. We turned the corner one day, and she says, well, look, there's a little dead bird in the street.
Mm-hmm.
A little sparrow or something. She says, let's take it home and see if we can mount it.
Yeah.
It's not easy. First thing, you have to take the skin off like a coat. Very carefully, or you cut through that thin bird hide or whatever. Then once you get it off, you have to save that body and duplicate it out of straw. It's a lot of work.
Was it true about her being real close with money, that she used buttons instead of the somewhat more expensive eyes that they used in stuffed animals and things like that?
That's true. She had a big box, a button box. She said, go pick out something we can use for the eyes. And, you know, it was perfectly good.
Throughout his life, Charlie has had an obsession with people's eyes.
I can tell you which nerves come through right here that you have to deaden in case I just got
the
cut right
supraorbital
here.
framing, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, through that supraorbital framing.
Right.
The ophthalmic division of
the trigeminal nerve.
That's it, and I'm a 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you knew some of those
Comes
things.
through the infraorbital branch here.
Right, and then there's one down the mental frame and
Yeah,
down
but
here.
what is that nerve?
Well, the one,
Yeah, this one.
the mandibular.
7th facial nerve.
Does it take a certain finesse to get an eye out without damaging too much of the surrounding tissue?
Well, I wouldn't think so.
You would not?
I wouldn't think so.
You think it'd be easy to do?
Well, it might not be real easy, but I think a person could do it. Y'all have a safe trip back. Okay. Okay, here we go.
In my experience, some of them view their victims as their possessions. They own them. They own the knowledge of those murders. And so to tell you about it means they're giving you something. They're giving you something that they own, especially if they've removed a body part or they've been particularly sexually deviant. Those are things that they do for their own personal reasons, and to give that up is not something that's going to happen lightly or quickly, if at all.
What struck me, I think, altogether about Albright is if you look at the characteristics that are used to diagnose psychopathy, that he has very, very many of them. I'm sure he would score high on the psychopathy checklist because he has the superficial charm and the glibness. He has the grandiosity. He has pathological lying to the max, I think. He had a swift and clever answer for every question that we posed to him. He was a classic psychopath. Trying to get the truth from Albright was like trying to catch a greased eel with an oiled glove.
Despite his claims of innocence, Charles Albright can't help reveling in his dark notoriety.
I'm Charles Albright, the supposed Texas eyeball killer. You're watching Psychopath Night on Channel 4.
Number 8 in our countdown of top 10 movie psychopaths. 30 years after it was released, this sci-fi classic still looks futuristic. Now, you may not think of this film as a psychopath movie, but it features one of the most striking portrayals of pure psychopathy in cinema history.
Describe in single words only the good things that come into your mind.
This
About
character
your mother?
shows a capacity
Your mother?
for extreme violence without remorse.
Let me tell you about my mother.
But the psychopaths in Blade Runner aren't human.
He can lift 400-pound atomic loads all day and night. The only way you can hurt him is to kill him.
Here's the problem. It's almost impossible to spot the difference between Harrison Ford's convincingly hard-boiled detective and the expressionless replicants he is tasked with tracking down. The only way to identify them is by a fictional empathy test that neuroscientists today might recognize.
Do you mind if I smoke?
It won't affect the test. All right, I'm going to ask you a series of questions. Just relax and answer them as simply as you can.
This film has been selected by psychopathy experts, neuroscientist James Fallon and Oxford University psychology professor Kevin Dutton.
The empathy test is an interesting one, isn't it?
The experts like the realism of this scene because a good way to spot a psychopath is to test their capacity for empathy.
You're reading a magazine, you come across a full-page nude photo of a girl.
Is this testing whether I'm a replicant or a lesbian, Mr. Deckard?
Just answer the questions, please.
And in terms of the whole empathy side of this with the replicants, they obviously have no empathy toward anybody else.
Yeah.
So just on that basis alone, I mean, it's very psychopathic.
Yeah.
So
No, I think
that
you're
way,
right.
I think these are psychopaths.
You're watching television. Suddenly you realize there's a wasp crawling on your arm.
I'd kill it.
There's a coldness to her response that alerts Harrison Ford and Jim Fallon that something is wrong.
This is a psychopath.
I
think this hits the mark. Not 100%, but it's pretty good.
Most scientists believe that this lack of empathy is the fundamental cornerstone of psychopathy. But what does a lack of empathy feel like? Time now to meet our second specimen of the evening. She's a high-powered lawyer and a diagnosed psychopath.
My pen name is Emmy Thomas, and I'm a former law professor. I'm a current attorney. I think I always knew that I wasn't quite like other people. During college, I recognized that I was a very manipulative, cunning person who was unable to connect to anyone on more than a superficial level, obsessed with power, and willing to do anything to get ahead. I was not a victim of child abuse, and I am not a murderer or a criminal. You would like me if you met me. I'm quite confident about that because I have met a statistically significant sample size of the population, and they were all susceptible to my charms.
Ms. Thomas is a 30-year-old Caucasian female seeking an assessment of her personality, particularly the presence of psychopathic traits. Most notably in Ms. Thomas's clinical presentation were egocentrism, sensation-seeking, interpersonal dominance, verbal aggression, and excessive self-esteem. These results are highly consistent with a psychopathic personality structure.
I've chosen to call myself a sociopath because of the negative connotations of psycho in the popular culture. The first time I went to see a therapist, I think I was 15 years old, and my mom wanted me to go see the therapist. I didn't seem to emotionally connect with people. I didn't really seem to have this sorts of emotional reactions. In fact, my father, one time we were sitting there watching television, and there was some sad boy, you know, he had cancer or something, and he was kind of speaking funny, and I was making fun of him, and my dad asked me, horrified, "Have you no empathy?" When I think of the word empathy, I think of it as this kind of bizarre trait. And I think empath, expresses to me the oddity that I consider empathy to be. This is somebody who claims to feel what other people are feeling. And isn't that kind of weird?
Emmy Thomas feels that one movie is a particularly realistic portrayal of psychopaths.
You've got a little boy. He shows you his butterfly collection, plus the killing jar.
I take him to the doctor.
Sometimes it feels like I am in the movie Blade Runner, and any slip-up or indication that I am different will draw suspicion. I do feel a little bit like a misunderstood minority. The only thing that you can sort of hope if you're a sociopath is that you are going to lie well enough and wear the mask well enough and hide in plain sight such that nobody will ever find out that you're a sociopath. I've always known that my heart is a little blacker and colder than most people's. Will I end up being shipped off to a sociopath's only gulag? Perhaps if I'm lucky. Many visitors to my blog have called for much worse, including our total extermination. I'm hoping that once you get to know one sociopath, you'll show even this cold heart some compassion when the cattle cars come to ship me off somewhere.
Well, you've heard her side of the story. And according to Professor Robert Hare, she's not alone.
Well, we have a cruise ship coming out right now, probably about 2,000 people on board. And if we go by statistics, maybe as many as 20 or 25 really psychopathic people on board, plus or minus a few, and an awful lot more who have many psychopathic features but are okay.
So, if they're not all running around killing people, what do all these psychopaths do for a living? Take a look at this table. Scientists have come up with a list of the most psychopathic professions. Surgeons, salespeople, media executives, and lawyers are all up there. But before we unveil the #1 slot, could you spot the psychopath in your office?
Top 5 things to look for in your office if you think that somebody might be, you might have one on your hands, a psycho. The first thing is obviously the lack of remorse. The second thing is that nothing is ever their fault. So they always blame everybody else. The third thing is, which may or may not be present, is a capacity for charm which gets switched on and off. And the key thing is the switching it on and off. So you always have a sense that this person isn't quite right. The fourth thing is probably that this person is going to be ultimately completely self-focused. In the end, when you look in the cold light of day, when you look at them, you realize that they never do anything that doesn't benefit themselves. And finally, they are game players. So you're looking for somebody who's playing tricks, who's lying. That's a clear sign of, that you've got one on your hands.
In a dog-eat-dog world, it's often the psychopath who comes out the winner. And there's no prizes for guessing which profession tops the psychopath league table.
I'm here to introduce a fabulous new game. It's called banking. Everyone's doing it.
Welcome to the shady world of the boardroom psychopath.
There was a study recently where they found a 5 times greater rate of psychopathy than there was in the general population. And this is not surprising if we think about it in terms of, why are there pedophiles in schools? Because that's where the kids are. Why are there psychopaths in finance? Because that's where they can make money and get power.
If you think of the harm that a serial killer, a sort of Hannibal Lecter, Ted Bundy, Fred West kind of killer does, is obviously ends somebody else's life. There's, in a sense, nothing worse than that. But corporate psychopaths end other people's lives through destroying their careers. What's more, they crash whole companies. What's more, when the truth is told about the credit crunch, the truth is that that was a mass outbreak of corporate psychopathy, which resulted in something that very nearly crashed the whole world economy.
The fall of Lehman Brothers in 2008 triggered the worst economic crisis in living memory. It collapsed under the weight of bad investments, masterminded by its leader, Dick Fuld, also known as the Gorilla. We're not saying he was a psychopath, and he's never been convicted of any crime, but Fuld was legendary for ruling through intimidation, and often acted as though he was fighting a war on Wall Street, as shown in this rousing performance.
If we get this right today, Papa will squeeze some of those shorts. Squeeze them hard. Not that I want to hurt him. Don't get that, please, because that's just not who I am. I am soft, I'm lovable. But what I really want to do is I want to reach in, rip out their heart, and eat it before they die.
I see psychopaths as parasitic predators. Some people have argued that corporate psychopaths are a smarter version of your criminal psychopath, and there might be some merit in that. Perhaps they have a better education, they were raised in a better community so that the role models were more business-oriented rather than criminal-oriented.
But for these corporate predators, the world of high finance offers much more than money and power. There's also the thrill of the chase.
Psychopaths have to find ways to express this need for risk, this need for danger. Most of banking is done through gambling with other people's money. Now that is perfect as an activity for a psychopath. And he can take risks. If you can take risks in a way that makes you lots of money, then you're onto a winner.
And so we've reached number 7 in our countdown. The most famous film depiction of a corporate psychopath.
Ought to be a picture of you in the dictionary on a persistence kid. Yeah. Now listen,
Listen, Jerry, I'm looking for...
Gordon Gekko may look like any other high-flying banker, but his violent language reveals the ruthlessness beneath the suave exterior.
Looks as good as on paper. We're in the kill zone, pal. We're lock and load. Lunch? Oh, you gotta be kidding. Lunch is for wimps. Okay, Billy, I'll talk at you.
In that film, he makes a speech in which he comes to the conclusion greed is good.
Greed is right. Greed works. Greed clarifies, cuts through, and captures the essence of the evolutionary spirit. Greed in all of its forms. Greed.
By the end of that speech, you're almost agreeing with him. You're almost saying, yes, greed is good. You're right. You know, the way to go. It's brilliantly done by Oliver Stone as a way of demonstrating the power of psychopathy. When a psychopathic leader, when he decides to really fire up his workforce, he gives you this feeling that psychopaths have and that we perhaps all secretly envy. There's this idea of total liberation, that I have no conscience, I can do whatever I like. If it hurts other people, I don't care.
Whether we're talking about cold-blooded killers or callous professionals who can destroy careers, even entire economies, all the experts agree that psychopaths are very, very bad news. At least most of them do. Oxford University's Professor Kevin Dutton believes we need psychopaths.
Psychopaths can be ruthless, they can be fearless, they can be focused, they can be cool under pressure, but these characteristics in themselves are not necessarily bad things.
Coming up, we reveal the England footballer who's high on the psychopathic spectrum. And we'll meet the next screen psychopath in our countdown. He's a British national treasure. Welcome back to our countdown of the top 10 movie psychopaths. Daniel Craig's James Bond may be hot on sex appeal, but one expert psychologist has Bond as a stone-cold psychopath. Based not only on his capacity to kill, but also his compulsion to joke about it.
Shocking.
Bond has been nominated as a top 10 psychopath by Oxford Professor Kevin Dutton. It's a controversial choice, but it looks like even Bond's bosses at MI6 are beginning to share his suspicions.
I'd like to start with some simple word associations. Just tell me the first word that pops into your head. For example, I might say day, and you might say wasted.
In this game of word association, Bond's answers become ever more revealingly psychopathic.
Gun.
Shot.
Agent.
Provocateur.
Woman.
Provocatrix.
Heart.
Target.
Bird.
Sky.
M.
Pitch.
Sunlight.
Swim.
Moonlight.
Dance.
Murder.
Employment.
Of course, 007 has many incarnations, and in this brutal scene, Daniel Craig's Bond showcases a taste for extreme violence without the slightest hint of remorse. By comparison, Roger Moore's Bond scores high on the psychopathic checklist for superficial charm and grandiosity.
I am over here.
Well, of course you are.
And this is Miss Penelope Smallbone, my new assistant.
Miss Smallbone?
And in this clip, they are turned up to the max as he lines up the new office girl for special
As
treatment.
I used to be?
I didn't say that.
Oh, you're such a flatterer, James.
Oh, Moneypenny, you know there never has been, and there never will be anybody but you.
So you've told me.
Welcome to Universal Exports.
Who are you?
But it's Sean Connery
My name is Bond.
who hits the psychopathic jackpot with an unbeatable combination of charisma,
Yes, as a matter of fact, there is. There is something I'd like you to get off your chest.
brutality, not a hint of empathy,
Where is Ernst Stavro Blofeld?
and always a killer line.
Speak up, darling, I can't hear you.
The idea that a great British hero like Bond is a psychopath may seem shocking. But not to Professor Dutton, because he has a controversial point of view about psychopaths. He thinks we need them.
Psychopaths can be ruthless, they can be fearless, they can be focused, they can be cool under pressure, but these characteristics in themselves are not necessarily bad things.
50 people have volunteered to help test Professor Dutton's theory that when you're in a crisis and your back is against the wall, it can help to have someone on your side who is high on the psychopathic scale.
Okay, folks, listen up. Whenever we hear the word psychopath, instantly we think of serial killers and rapists, people who are bad. But imagine if I were to paint you a different picture. Imagine if I were to tell you that the arsonist who burns your house down might also, in a parallel universe, be the hero most likely to brave the flaming timbers of a crumbling, blazing building to seek out and drag out your loved ones. We're actually referring to a specialised group of individuals, and being a psychopath is not a matter of all or nothing. It's not a black or white affair, but rather psychopathy, a little bit like height or weight or intelligence, is on a spectrum along which each of us have our place. Now, what we're going to do here today is we're going to put you through a series of tests which should differentiate those of you who are high on the spectrum and those who are low on the spectrum. Okay, so if you're happy with that and you're ready to go, if you'd like to file off upstairs, we'll get the show on the road.
Professor Dutton starts with a simple questionnaire. You can take this test yourself by going to the Channel 4 website. It's an accurate indicator of courage, ruthlessness and risk-taking abilities, all traits which the more psychopathic will have in spades.
I hope to think I'll be quite low on the spectrum. I like to think I'm a nice person, but then again I'm quite competitive, so I want to win.
I hope pretty low.
Yeah.
I hope pretty high.
The only one you agreed with was cheating on your partner is okay so long as you don't get caught.
Yeah, because I did it before.
It doesn't matter if I have to step on other people to get what I want. You've said agree to that as well.
Yeah, well, if I want something, I'm not going to let obstacles get in my way.
What do you like with physical pain? Can you work through physical pain and tiredness to get the job done?
Absolutely rubbish. Not at all.
Rubbish at physical pain?
Not even
all
a
right.
little bit.
Can you remember the last time you cried?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, Mum and Dog died.
Imagine that you are in a room with a newborn baby, okay, and that baby is lying in a cot, fast asleep. And you have to believe me when I tell you this is true, okay? So this is just for a thought experiment. You have to believe me when I tell you that that newborn baby, when he grows up, will grow into Adolf Hitler, okay? You have got a pillow in that room and you've got 2 minutes. When you walk out of that room, is that baby still alive or is he dead?
He's dead. I'll kill the baby.
Yeah?
He can be dead.
I will not kill the baby.
Logically, I
Yeah.
agree that
Okay.
that should be done, but I would not have an easy time doing it.
Is that baby still alive or is he dead?
Dead.
No hesitation whatsoever.
Adolf Hitler, no. No.
Based on his questions, Professor Dutton now has an idea of where each volunteer lies on the psychopathic scale.
This person weighed in with a score of 23, and that is Ikra, I want you. With a score of 22 is Mike.
Professor Dutton's narrowed the group down to the most psychopathic pair, Mike and Ikra, and the two least psychopathic individuals, Melissa and Erin. And if Dutton's theory holds true, the high scorers should come out on top in his next test. But first, as evidence for his theory that some psychopathic traits are a positive advantage, Kevin wants to introduce someone you may have heard of. He's a former star of the England football team and a self-confessed high scorer on the psychopathic scale. Psychopath Night welcomes David James.
What is one of the best things about being high on the psychopathic spectrum?
So you can just literally just put everything to one side and focus on one thing. Emotional detachment from all the performance. I mean, it's a weird one because you're performing in front of loads of people who are emotional. For me, and I've said this publicly, it's kind of like we do our job so you can be emotional.
Do you think that in order to get to the very top, you need to be high on the psychopathic spectrum?
To get to the top, no. To stay at the top, I think, yeah. To stay there, then you have to be able to deal with these pressures.
What would you say were the downsides?
Lack of social ability. Yeah, I can't do the empathy thing. FA Cup final 2008. We win the cup, hugging each other. Yeah, fantastic. It was like, yeah. And then the lads were going around and seeing the fans. And I sort of stood there clapping. I was looking at them going, yeah, you enjoy that, it's good. I think I'm just stood here, just looking at everyone else enjoying themselves, and I was quite happy with that.
David James, congratulations. What emotions are you experiencing?
I don't know what to say for once. Another hard game, a bit scrappy, but deserved the win.
Yeah.
To prove his point that psychopathic traits can be a good thing, Professor Dutton has got one more challenge lined up for his volunteers.
The bungee jump is a gold standard test of nerve and bottle. In fact, fear of heights is one of our most common phobias.
Professor Dutton's hoping to demonstrate that when faced with a daunting challenge, it's often the psychopathic amongst us who rise to the occasion.
Psychopaths are optimists, they're positive. They have a remorseless ability to focus on what they can get out of a situation, often to the expense of safety, danger, other people's feelings, and indeed even their own pain. In a competitive head-to-head test, I would put my money on people who are high on the psychopathic spectrum to win, hands down, every time.
I'll give it a go.
You give it a go?
Yeah.
All right, mate.
Sounds like fun.
High-scoring Mike doesn't disappoint.
Oh, the cage. And it's going up.
It's
Great.
going up?
Yep.
Are you going up with it?
If you want me to, that's fine. I've been up in a cherry picker.
Okay. But you're going to be...
favourite thing,
but
we
you're
can do
going to
it.
be coming down?
Yep.
On the end of a bungee rope?
Nope, not a chance. No.
No?
Sorry, no.
Definitely not doing
Yep,
it?
Not even a little bit.
And the first of the low scorers has thrown in the towel immediately.
This is a bungee jump setup we're looking at here. Yep.
Okay.
The other low scorer, Melissa, is also wavering.
So, I guess I'm not thrilled.
It's up to you. Your call.
Considering it,
Your
to be
call.
honest.
Sure. What we want you to do is a bungee jump.
From that high?
From that high. We told you it was going to be interesting. Up to you.
Okay.
You up for that?
Yeah.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay. Psychopaths are a phobia-free zone. The brains of psychopaths are wired up in such a way that they don't feel fear and anxiety like the rest of us.
So I think I'm going to back out. I'm sorry.
No problem.
True to form, the last of our low scorers has quit.
3, 2, 1, bungee, lean forward.
And with one small step, Mike makes a giant leap for Psychopaths. But will Ikra take the plunge and strike a winning blow for Team Psycho?
Don't look down. Nice deep breaths.
How can I not look down?
Look out onto the horizon. Keep talking to me.
Okay, stop now.
Alright, it's alright. It's okay. Till you say so, till you're ready, okay? What I want you to do, put one arm across there, hold on to your harness. Okay, hold the arm across there,
You're
hold on
holding
to your
me,
arm. Yeah, I've got you there. You feel me?
Yeah.
Okay, I've got you there. 2, 1, bungee, lean
No,
forward.
no, no, no! No.
Okay.
No way.
Okay, it's alright.
No way.
It's alright. Got you. Going now. 2, 1, bungee, lean forward.
Ikra, fantastic.
Oh, that was amazing.
Did you enjoy it?
Yeah. Well, with the blood rushing to my head, I was like, oh, my head's going to pop.
Would you do it again?
Yeah.
If I was in a crisis, if my back was against the wall and the chips were down, I would have Ikra and I would have Mike on my side.
The closer you look at psychopathy, the more complicated and intriguing it becomes. It's a puzzling condition that can encompass both the eyeball killer and a man you can count on in a crisis. But why are some psychos locked away for murder while others are high-flying professionals? Find out as our countdown of top 10 movie psychos continues. It's time to probe behind the mask of the psychopath. We've reached number 5 in our countdown of celluloid psychopaths, and they don't come any more deadly than this smooth talker. In this film, Matt Damon plays the talented Mr. Ripley as a charming, well-mannered and, on first appearances, well-rounded individual.
Dickie Greenleaf? Who's that? It's Tom. Tom Ripley.
And in this scene, he deftly wangles his way into the world of two rich socialites, played by Gwyneth Paltrow and Jude Law.
Hello. Well, I knew you, so I suppose you must have known me.
The brilliance of this portrayal is that Ripley seems so plausible as an unassuming tourist.
This is Marge Sherwood. Tom, sorry, what is it? Ripley.
How do you do?
How do you do, Marge?
But beneath the mask of normality lies a psychopathic killer.
God's... Oh, God! No! Stop! Stop! Please! Please! Stop it! Dickie, let me kill you!
The eruption of violence in this scene is shocking. It's an ugly murder played out with visceral realism. But what is so unsettling about Ripley is how he effortlessly wins the trust of those around him. And worst of all, he gets away with it. "30 years ago, this man gave the world an object lesson in how a persuasive facade can mask a true psychopath. And in one of the most controversial murder trials in US history, he almost got away with it." Los Angeles had been terrorized by a string of sadistic killings.
This is a location where we found Judy Miller's body. On November 1st, 1977, my partner and I got a call that we had a nude young female whose body was found up here on Alta Terrace Drive. There was no doubt that she had been murdered. There were ligature marks around her neck, and when we eventually, there were some ligature marks on her ankles also.
After the bodies of 10 women and girls were found dumped on hillsides around the city, the killer became known as the Hillside Strangler.
We called that the week that was, from the 20th to the 29th. I think we had 5 found within a 9-day period.
After the biggest manhunt in LA's history, police arrested 27-year-old Kenneth Bianchi, a charming family man who didn't match up with most people's image of a crazed killer.
Well, I came there hoping to find a better job. I've always wanted to go to California. The sun, the girls, the beaches, you know, the dreams. You don't think of the smog and the crazy city. And
well, the first time I met him, he was standing there looking out the window at the traffic below, and he turned around as I walked in, and he had this great big smile. "Liz, I've heard so much about you. How are you?" He strides across the jury room, hand out, and, you know, you automatically react to that. He was good looking, he was charming, he knew how to make friends, so he was someone that you wouldn't be afraid of.
I don't remember. I was just asked that not too long ago. I seriously don't remember.
You can't remember what you ran the 100 in?
It couldn't have been very good.
But Bianchi's charm offensive didn't stop after his arrest. It just shifted gear. This remarkable footage of Bianchi in custody gives us a rare insight into the psychological game playing that is second nature to some psychopaths.
Between the publicity and the damage it's done to my family and to myself, and to a point of where my lawyer and I just couldn't see eye to eye because I knew what I had done and I hadn't killed any girls.
Despite overwhelming evidence linking him to the murders, the smooth-talking Bianchi protested his innocence.
Close your eyes, Ken.
But when psychiatrists decided to use hypnosis to unlock his memory, the case took a bizarre twist.
There are 5 grades of hypnosis. He was probably 4 and a half, you know. So it was no problem. He'd close his eyes, he'd go into a trance. You know, you didn't have to do any fancy inductions with him.
Yeah.
Under hypnosis, a separate, much darker personality emerged. He called himself Steve.
Hi. Hi. Are you Ken?
Do I look like Ken?
I mean, you know, you're talking about the classic good versus evil concept. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Pardon me. It isn't Ken, is it?
No, it's not. It's Steve.
Oh, okay, Steve.
This is Steve. You look at him and you are scared because you know he's got evil, and if he wants to come over and choke your neck, he'll do so. So you sit back and, well, how do I talk with him, and where's the door?
Okay. I don't like you. I don't like you at all.
Well, why don't you like me?
He came out and he was a mean son of a bitch that was gonna kill anybody that got in his way, and don't you stand there and argue with him. He'll just wipe you off the face of the earth, you know, and no morals, no conscience.
I think you're so fucking smart.
That's about how it felt, you know.
Ken Bianchi's other personality, Steve, claimed responsibility for 5 of the killings.
Okay, I'll do you a favor, okay, so that you don't get lost along the way.
Okay, all right. You do me the favor.
It's real easy.
Yeah.
What you don't understand is, this one I killed.
Dr. Allison diagnosed him with the same mental illness as Norman Bates in Hitchcock's Psycho.
Mr. Bianchi suffers from what is currently classified as a hysterical neurosis, dissociative type multiple personality. He is a dual personality and has been so since the age of 9. Therefore, at the present time, I would not consider Ken Bianchi competent to stand trial for the crimes charged.
This Caston is the broad you killed, you say?
Am I going too fast?
Yeah, you're going so damn fast. I'm not that smart.
Dr. Allison's advice was crucial. His diagnosis of multiple personality disorder meant that Bianchi was legally insane and unfit to stand trial for murder. The police thought he was faking it to avoid the death penalty. Then, just for a moment, Bianchi's mask slipped.
Does he have a last name?
He did have a last name.
What was it?
I can't remember.
Well, what's Steve?
Walker.
Walker. Oh.
Bianchi had made a fatal error. Detectives discovered his imaginary personality, Steve Walker, was in fact a real person. Bianchi had earlier used papers stolen from a Stephen Walker to forge fake credentials as a psychologist.
We knew we had it. We knew we had broken how Bianchi had come up with the name Stephen Walker.
Far from being insane, Bianchi was a pure psychopath and a master of manipulation.
Well, to catch a psychopathic criminal has a lot of challenges. You'll never change the fact that they're excellent con men and they're excellent liars, even under a lot of stress. So you bring them in and they just look at you and say, well, I would never have done that. I love my wife, I love my child, and they're very believable. They're going to attempt to con you, and in some cases they're going to con you very successfully.
Did we get beneath that facade? No. This was a guy that was all for himself. The lack of empathy, the lack of remorse. He's I think, a classic psychopath.
Mr. Bianchi had faked memory loss, he had faked hypnosis, and he had faked multiple personalities. In this, Mr. Bianchi was unwittingly aided and abetted by most of the psychiatrists who naively swallowed Mr. Bianchi's story hook, line, and sinker.
Well, it was about as big a learning experience as one could have. But again, because we were left with so many questions about how did he do all this? I mean, in reading this, I could say, hey, I was naive as hell.
One big question remains. What do we do with psychopaths? Should we lock them up, or can they be cured? And how can you tell if a cure has worked if you can't trust a word they say? Join us after the break as we go deeper into the mind of the psychopath. At number 4 in our countdown of top 10 movie psychopaths is a film that became notorious for portraying violence with an almost operatic relish. Alex is the leader of a gang of teenage delinquents. He's a psychopath who is addicted to acts of random violence, even against his friends, even when he is pretending to help them. Far from showing remorse, violence fills him with undisguised glee. He's one of the most convincing psychopaths ever depicted on film. The film is less realistic in this scene. Doctors try to cure Alex with a kind of aversion therapy in a bid to rewire his brain and wean him off his psychopathic instincts for violence. He's force-fed a diet of disturbing imagery.
Like it was done in Hollywood.
But how much do scientists in the real world know about the psychopathic brain? We're about to try a Clockwork Orange test on our very own psychopath. Our guinea pig is Andy McNabb, a former member of the Elite Special Forces Unit, the SAS. Andy's being assessed by psychologist Prof Kevin Dutton. He's devised a series of tests to measure how high a subject rates on what he calls the spectrum of psychopathy.
Okay, so Andy, I tested you a couple of years ago. You came up pretty high on the psychopathic spectrum. Would you say that those kind of traits, those kind of personality characteristics make it easier to kill someone?
Yeah. First person I killed I was 19, and that was very close. That was like about 15 metres.
Right.
And it was a guy only 6 months older than me at the time. I was 19. He just turned sort of 20. He was a provisional IRA terrorist. He got killed. I shot about a couple of others. It really does become a drill. So when you're firing, it's part of the drill. So, and I think that you know, it's not as if you've got notches on the belt. Oh yeah, I've killed a lad. But actually, it's not as if I really think about it.
Now, it's not quite Clockwork Orange, but we decided to mount our own brain experiment. It's called the startle reflex test. Professor Dutton starts by fitting Andy with a special cap that records the electrical activity in his brain. As a control, we're also testing the brain of assistant Natalie, who, by her own admission, wouldn't hurt a fly. We then attach an electrode to the muscle beneath their eyes, which controls the blink reflex. By measuring this reflex, we'll be able to tell how anxious Natalie and Andy are.
Thanks, Kevin.
Professor Dutton plays them soothing sounds and pictures. But not for long. Suddenly they're replaced by violent noises and disturbing images. Psychopaths don't seem to suffer anxiety in the same way as the rest of us do. So Dutton expects very different results from his two guinea pigs.
Well, when we look at Andy McNabb's results, what we see here is his responses for the neutral, nice images were pretty much identical to his responses for the nasty, gory images. And what that shows is that these nasty, gory images made no difference to Andy. It was exactly the same as if he was looking at a nice mountain scene or a nice flower bed, or whether he was looking at a dismembered body or the charred victim of a disaster scene. Absolutely no difference at all to him. Well, the contrast with Natalie couldn't be more of a contrast. Natalie's actually shooting right up to the 140 microvolts mark, which is a huge shift.
So Clockwork Orange got it wrong. Images of extreme violence don't bother psychopaths one bit. Now you might be wondering, what's the difference between non-violent psychopaths and the ones that are deadly? Professor Jim Fallon thinks he has the answers.
The way I think of it, psychopathy is a three-legged stool. And so the idea is the three legs, one leg is the genetics. That is these so-called high-risk genes. There are no bad or evil genes, but there are genes that are associated with certain behaviors and traits, like aggression. And there are genes that are associated with that. It won't make you a criminal by itself. But that pattern sets up, it loads that gun, if you will, for psychopathy without pulling the trigger. The second leg of the stool would be the brain pattern. That is the brain activation pattern. Psychopaths had this sort of loss of activity in the area of the brain, the frontal lobe, right over the eyes. It's called the orbital cortex. It's right over the orbits. And also the amygdala. The amygdala, which controls rage, other emotions, feeding, aggression, predatory behavior. It's at the front part of the temporal lobe. And the areas affecting empathy were also looked wrong. Doesn't make you a criminal, but all psychopaths have it. Now the third thing that kind of wraps it, those two things are more have to do with nature. The third thing that can change everything is early abuse, abandonment by a parent, and also physical, emotional, sexual abuse early on. The worst stressors occur at birth and for the first couple of years after. And so those three effects, the brain pattern of activity, the genes, and early trauma, that's a psychopathic pattern.
According to Professor Fallon, violent psychopaths are the ones with all three elements, a lethal concoction of nature and disastrous nurture.
You needn't take it any further, sir. You've proved to me that all this ultra-violence and killing is wrong and terribly wrong. I've learned my lesson, sir. I see now what I've never seen before. I'm cured, praise God.
We are concerned only with cutting down crime. And with relieving the ghastly congestion in our prisons.
In Clockwork Orange, the authorities boast that their therapy has transformed Alex from a killer into a model citizen. But this flies in the face of what most scientists believe is possible.
Joy before the angels of God. The point is that it works.
But one expert claims psychopaths can be cured, and that he's done it. Dr. Bob Johnson believes that the third leg of the psychopathic stool, childhood trauma, is the key to unlocking their condition. In the 1990s, he was a psychiatrist at the maximum security Parkhurst prison, home to some of Britain's most dangerous psychopaths.
Now, I spoke to 60 murderers, including 6 serial killers. In every case where I could get their confidence, there was a childhood trauma of some sort or other. Absolutely without exception. I call it frozen terror. And what happens is that the small child is bullied, mum dies, some trauma happens, and the child can't say, just a minute. The child puts it in a box. Denial, projection, whatever you call it, dissociation, puts it in a box, and the box remains because you open the lid and it's terrible inside. So my task was to persuade them to have a look inside because the box is now empty. And when they did trust me, had a look, saw that it was empty, they grew up.
Dr. Johnson claims that having confronted their childhood terror, his violent psychopathic patients became calm and orderly. He seemed to be on the road to the holy grail of psychotherapy, a cure for psychopathy. But other experts disagree and find Dr. Johnson hard to believe.
Bad news. Psychopathy is like diamonds, it's forever.
One of the offenders that we interviewed actually made the statement. He said, the problem is that I'm a cat in a world of mice. And nobody understands why I'm doing what I'm doing. What I'm doing is perfectly normal for a cat. Quite interesting. So what are the implications? Well, one implication is that if you engage in the standard traditional therapeutic treatment program, say in a prison, trying to change the behavior and the attitudes and personality traits of a psychopath, what are you really doing? You're trying to change a cat into a mouse.
That's absolute rubbish, in my view. Absolute rubbish. That's taking the psychopath's view of the world as a psychopath sees it. Now, that's most unsatisfactory. I don't accept that at all. A cat in the world of, I mean, that's mythology. That's ridiculous. It's not a question of cats and mice. It's a question of human beings.
Now, the cat, in this context, is going to learn to simulate a mouse. They'll use all the appropriate language, and I can pretend. So they know the right words in prison. They know exactly what to do. There are my ways. I'm going to be a better person. I've done all these things. But we're probably still dealing with a cat.
Many experts think that psychopaths are born and little can be done to help them. But if that is the case, what does it mean for children who have the condition? Coming up, what to do when your child is a psychopath.
I don't want to kill my son, but I will if I have to.
Welcome back to our countdown of the top 10 movie psychopaths. At number 3 is a movie that deals with a parent's worst nightmare.
Can you say ball? 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 Oh, no? Okay. I'm gonna throw it to you. You're gonna roll it back to me. Okay? Okay. Roll it back to Mommy.
This film has been picked by our experts as the most accurate portrayal of child psychopathy. It tells the traumatic story of how a loving mother tries to cope as her son grows from being a callous child into a teenager who goes on a killing spree at his high school.
We've got psychopathy definitely there. There's absolutely no rapport, no empathy with the mother at all.
But the way he's looking at
it, that's it.
Throws it off.
Because
you know, an autistic kid is not going to have that kind of eye
That's
contact.
right. Yeah,
so
yeah.
that's a
right.
tell right there. Some start really early.
Yeah.
And
Apprentice
Apprentice.
Yeah.
This is an apprentice psychopath.
Yeah.
I would say at this point you would really start suspecting it if you were a parent.
I wanted to thank you for calling the ambulance.
Later in the film, Kevin is now 14 and his parents are trying to work out the role he played in a terrible accident that has rocked the family.
I was concerned that you might be feeling responsible.
But chillingly, Kevin seems not to care.
Because you were supposed to be looking after her.
We just don't want you to blame yourself.
I mean, the implication is he's obviously responsible for the loss of his sister's eye.
Yeah, and he blows it off. I mean,
that's right. Yeah.
No, I don't. I mean, I never said I did.
She's gonna need a glass eye, Kevin.
So we would appreciate you looking out for her and any name calling.
You don't really remember being a kid much, do you, Dad? So he's just gonna have to suck it up.
There is absolutely no remorse. In fact, he's reveling in it.
Out of the clips we've seen so far,
number one.
Yeah.
This is sort of what some people call a primary psychopath. It's really genetically strongly driven, and it's an essential part of their core.
But can you really call a child a psychopath? Those who try to treat the condition don't like to label children as psychopaths, so they use the term callous unemotional. And children can start displaying these callous unemotional traits from a very young age.
Often kids with callous and emotional traits will have social skills, so they won't seem odd, and they will know how to interact well with other people. And a lot of times, some of the kids with callous and emotional traits, they would come in with just these horrendous backgrounds of doing things to other people, which is why they were referred to us. But throughout most of the day, the people working with them would say, oh, this is just a great kid. He's so sweet. He's so nice. He's so polite. You know, and I can't believe, I don't think the teachers are right. I think they're making this up. This kid can't be this way. And then sometimes we wouldn't see anything until the end of the day when we'd do some computer games where they could win prizes. And if they didn't win a prize, then they'd get very belligerent and threatening and try and get people to give them the top prize, even if they didn't earn it.
These children are often bullies, so at a school setting they may use coercive tactics to get money out of other children. They may be violent towards other children. They don't mind about the distress that their behavior might cause for other people.
They don't show a lot of emotions, except when it gets them something. You know, if they think that they can get what they want by being charming and complimenting you and saying nice things about you, they'll do that. If they think the way to get what they want is to scare you and intimidate you, they will do that.
I think the parents that I have spoken with have expressed that they feel almost a little bit scared. They feel like their children don't have this normal emotional resonance with other people than they see in their other children. So the parents just don't really feel like they can reach their children, if you like.
What is so memorable in We Need to Talk About Kevin is the heartbreaking performance by Tilda Swinton, who doesn't want to give up on her psychopathic child even after his murderous killing spree.
Your time's up.
But in real life, not all mothers feel this way. On her farmstead in deepest Arkansas, Joyce Alexander feels she is a woman under siege.
Okay, this is an antique 38, and it's a Colt Detective Special. This gun is a Taurus 38. I carry it when I'm out on the farm. And this is by the same company that manufactured my little 38. This is called a Taurus Judge. This stays on my bed under my Bible.
But Joyce isn't protecting herself from thieves or vagrants. She says she's protecting herself from her own son.
My son, I believe, wants to kill me because I turned him into the police. He was my son and I loved him. I knew what a psychopath was, but I couldn't emotionally accept it. And this is Patrick when he was, about 10, I guess. And he was a wonderful, wonderful kid. He was very charming. He knew how to ingrate himself with anybody. When he was 5, he had a romance that lasted over a year with a little girl that was 6 that lived behind us. And they walked around hand in hand in love and decided when they were going to get married and where they were going to live. And it was so cute. I mean, all the neighborhood mothers just thought it was darling. And they were just inseparable for a year. And then she threw him over for his brother Clay for about 2 weeks and then tried to go back to him. And Patrick wouldn't have anything to do with her. I mean, he was done with her.
Patrick is now serving a life sentence for the murder of his friend Jessica Witt. He shot Jessica twice in the head from behind after she discovered he was stealing money from her grandfather. Patrick was 20 at the time and has been in prison ever since.
Even though I'm a mental health professional, I was in denial that my son, even though I knew intellectually he met all the criteria for psychopath, I still couldn't let go of that hope that I had that maybe somehow he could get out of prison and live a good life.
But on one routine visit to her son's prison in Texas, Joyce's eyes were opened.
A few years ago, I went to see him, and he was trying to convince me to do something that was illegal. It was against the rules, smuggle in something for him. And I refused. And he had been pleading, kind of like, "Oh, Mom, what would Jesus do?" And I kept saying, "No, no, no." And finally, just instant change. It was like looking into Satan's eyes. You know that famous picture of Charlie Manson where it looks like Satan? That's what his face looked like. And he looked at me like that and he said, "You wouldn't like me very much if you knew the truth about my crime." It was worse than the cops even knew. "You wouldn't like me if you knew the truth about my crime." And it was like I'd been hit in the face with a bucket of cold water. That was when I realized that he was a monster. He was proud of what he did. That's the wonderful young man, that's the wonderful young man that I loved. But he's dead.
Joyce has never spoken to her son Patrick since that meeting. She now lives in fear of his revenge.
I have no doubt that if he gets out, he will, even if he's got a leg monitor on, he'll cut it off and come to Arkansas, and there will be a shootout at the OK Corral. And either he dies or I die. And I'm determined it's not going to be me. I don't want to kill my son, but I will if I have to.
Coming up, we reveal the most realistic psychopath in movie history. Tonight, we've gazed upon the different faces of the psychopath, from cold-blooded killers to high-achieving professionals. We've discovered that although they come in different shapes and sizes, they share the same basic characteristics. They're ruthless manipulators who will often do whatever it takes to get what they want. We've also seen how FBI profiler Mary Ellen O'Toole uses Hollywood films to teach agents how to spot a psychopath. And she's been talking us through some of her prime examples. It's nearly time to reveal the winner. But first things first. In the runners-up spot, it's a high-achieving professional who's also handy with a knife.
Haiti, she's out of the woods.
Dr. O'Toole selected this film for its pitch-perfect portrayal of psychopathic grandiosity.
Nice going, people. By the way, everybody, it's great to be at St. Agnes. Is that why you didn't give Dr.
Alec Baldwin plays a high-powered surgeon whose showboating charm masks extreme egotism.
Riley, do you have a God complex? This is not acceptable. No, let him address me. Jed? No, it's about time I got to give some answers here. Stop typing. This is all.
When he's hauled before a disciplinary committee for wrongly removing a woman's ovaries, he reveals the true mindset of a psychopath.
Which makes me wonder if this lawyer has any idea as to the kind of grades one has to receive in college to be accepted at a top medical school. If you have the vaguest clue as to how talented someone has to be to lead a surgical team. I have an MD from Harvard. I am board certified in cardiothoracic medicine and trauma surgery. I have been awarded citations from 7 different medical boards in New England, and I am never, ever sick at sea.
In this clip in the movie Malice, it's stunning. You can really feel the hair on the back of your neck stand out as Alec Baldwin, who plays his doctor, comments on his credentials, and they are impeccable.
When someone goes into that chapel and they fall on their knees and they pray to God that their wife doesn't miscarry, or that their daughter doesn't bleed to death, or that their mother doesn't suffer acute neural trauma from post-operative shock, who do you think they're praying to?
And it is a stunning portrayal for me of the egotism and narcissism that you would expect to find in someone who's psychopathic.
Now, you go ahead and read your Bible, Dennis, and you go to your church, and with any luck you might win the annual raffle. But if you're looking for God, he was in operating room number 2 on November 17th, and he doesn't like to be second-guessed.
I've had psychopaths actually say they are God. They act very grandiose, very grandiose. The world is all about them. They are smarter than anybody else. They are more powerful. They are omnipotent, especially when you talk to someone who is a murderer. They have the power of life and death in their hands. So when they talk about being omnipotent, godlike, they look at it and say, because I take life and I give life.
You ask me if I have a God complex? Let me tell you something. I am God.
Ever since Alfred Hitchcock's classic horror movie Psycho came out more than 50 years ago, we've been fascinated by psychopaths. Tonight, we've been counting down the top 10 movie psychopaths as chosen by our experts. We've discovered that they come in many different shapes and sizes, but each of them has captured some of the key traits of psychopathy: callousness, lack of empathy, superficial charm, coolness under pressure, and fearlessness. But according to our experts, there's one fictional psycho who combines all these traits and more. The moment has come to reveal our #1 top movie psychopath.
The winner, Heath Ledger, is the Joker.
Ledger's virtuoso portrayal of Batman's arch-enemy in The Dark Knight not only won applause from viewers and movie critics, it also drew the praise of our experts for capturing the complete psychopathic personality in one glorious package. This dramatic bank heist certainly impressed our FBI profiler.
The psychopathic features of the Joker, played by Heath Ledger, to me are amazing. The bank robbery, though, is what we would call a takeover bank robbery, which is, it's very loud, it's noisy, he's yelling, everybody down, everybody down.
Let's go, pal, I'm making a withdrawal here.
You don't have to do that to rob a bank. To rob a bank, you can go in and quietly, you hand the teller a note, the teller gives you the money and you leave. A psychopath is not going to rob a bank quietly because they're sensation seekers, they're thrill seekers, they want the takeover. And then as you're watching that bank robbery scene, you're seeing the school bus and the other bank robbers are putting the money in the back of the bus, and he turns around almost without any blinking.
What happened to the rest of the guys?
And just shoots them. Again, very typical of a psychopath. Don't think for one second I bonded with you. If you thought you were my friend, you are sorely mistaken. He played that out brilliantly.
Criminals in this town used to believe in things.
Then he walks over to the bank manager, and consistent with a good psychopath, their fear level is very, very low. They're fearless. Engages him in a casual conversation.
What do you believe in, huh? What do you believe in?
I believe whatever doesn't kill you simply makes you stranger.
So you see the fearlessness, you see the callousness, you see the lack of empathy, you see the sensation seeking, all in the very first scene. But he brings out those traits in a way that you can't miss them.
After that supremely psychopathic scene, Ledger goes from strength to strength, ticking off the psychopathic traits with unerring accuracy.
Do you want to know why I use a knife? Guns are too quick. You can't savor all the little emotions.
Well, there goes the callousness and the lack of empathy.
That's a real sadist talking there.
Good evening.
And how about that for grandiosity and a need to be centre stage?
We are tonight's entertainment.
Hannibal Lecter, eat your heart
I
out.
only have one question. Where is Harvey Dent?
If you know psychopathy, you don't miss the traits in this movie whatsoever.
I don't want to kill you. What would I do without you?
Finally, in this scene, the Joker cuts to the very heart of what it means to be a psychopath.
Complete me. You're garbage. You kills for money. Don't talk like one of them. You're not.
Strip away the crazy makeup, and what Heath Ledger gives us is a pure psychopath who presents himself as the ultimate survivor, free from what he sees as society's hypocritical values.
They'll cast you out. Like a leper. See, their morals, their code. It's a bad joke. Dropped at the first sign of trouble. They're only as good as the world allows them to be. I'll show you. When the chips are down, these civilized people, they'll eat each other. See, I'm not a monster. I'm just ahead of the curve.
Perhaps this is why we're so fascinated with psychopaths. For all their destructive tendencies, they enjoy a freedom from the rules of society that we secretly envy. They're the stuff of our nightmares and our fantasies.
Retired from work but not from life, can some over-the-hillers make off with a masterpiece? Darren Brown, The Great Art Robbery, available now on 4OD. Giving us the creeps on Film for this Monday. You'll never think of the Tooth Fairy in the same way again. Don't Be Afraid of the Dark is at 9. Up next tonight, Harrison Ford stars in Thriller, Clear and Present Danger.